I am an Australian English voice. Before we begin, I have a program announcement. The music played at the start and end of this show are original songs written and performed by kids #NGOJ. They spell their name J, just J, like how Mr. T spells his name. You will find out what a #NGO is during this show. Are you ready to rumble? He's just an awkward little man doing some stand-up and talking some real talk. Give it up for...
Hello, my name is Ken, and I'm a pessimistic introvert. The pessimist in me thinks the world is going to end tomorrow, and the introvert in me really hopes I die alone. I don't care what QAnon says, Barack Obama is not eating babies. Do you know how many calories are in a baby? And it's all baby fat. He's way too thin. Hillary, on the other hand, was it just me, or did every little boy, when he saw that box of tampons in the bathroom closet, think, I wonder what that feels like? I asked a sex worker for a girlfriend experience. She complained about the way I dressed, criticized my driving, threw all my clothes out the bedroom window, and slept with an ex-boyfriend. I think she nailed it. So I just turned 58, and I'm experiencing one of the time-honored traditions of getting older: frequent urination. Every time I go to sleep, I think I better go one more time. Third time's the charm. Getting up more at night to go, but that's not even the worst of it. Sometimes while I'm washing my hands after my sitting down business, I realize I gotta pee again. I was just there 5 minutes ago. Or 15 if the Wordle was more challenging that day. But my doctor says my prostate is fine for a man my age. But I thought it would be good to keep a closer eye on it, keep a finger on the pulse of my prostate, if you know what I mean. So I suggested monthly, weekly exams. Nah, she said annual is just fine. My doctor really knows her way around the prostate, and that sounds like it should be a good thing. That snap of the glove, the tantalizing lubing of the finger, then in and out, real quick, all done. Every year as I'm pulling up my briefs, I think, yep, that's how she felt. Yeah, one time. But there is an upside to this. I remember the anxiety when I used to go to the doctor when I was younger, and they would say, can you leave a urine sample? And I'm thinking, well, I peed when I got up, had 3 cups of coffee, 2 beers at lunch, it's only 3:30, I'll try. Now when they ask, can you leave a urine? Yep. How many of those dinky little cups do you want me to fill up? My father's go-to punishment was spanking. As soon as I was born, he rushed into the delivery room and spanked me. That's for kicking your mother. And whatever else you did in there because of original sin. Speaking of which, isn't original sin really just God holding the longest grudge ever? My father either didn't have porn or hid it really well. So I had to settle for near porn, porn light, which in our house was the brassiere section of the JCPenney catalog. Yeah, we had the Sears catalog too, but I was a JCPenney man. Remember how big those things were? The catalogs I'm talking about. It was a real bitch sneaking that up to my room. My father never drank because it warns against it in the Bible. He was not, however, as attentive to the warnings about lust. While watching Wheel of Fortune with my mother, he would play that classic guessing game, is Vanna White wearing a bra? No matter what his answer, he was focused on her breasts. I think my father complex has a God complex. So I was raised in an evangelical, fundamentalist Christian home and church, a patriarchy. Women couldn't preach, women couldn't be deacons or elders, women couldn't teach men, women couldn't speak up in church, women just couldn't. The husband was the unequivocal head of the household and responsible for everything. Well, everything except cooking, cleaning, childcare, childbirth, the C words, girl stuff. I was at my niece's wedding and really felt sorry for the groom as the pastor laid into him, putting the very survival of his family squarely on his shoulders. He had to be the wage earner, the decision maker, the child disciplinarian, the spiritual leader, the grill master. It was brutal. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid who just graduated from a small Christian liberal arts school. Both my parents were introverts, and I think that explains a lot about me. I never really saw them interact with other people, even between my mother and father. And my father never interacted with me. I pretty much just stayed out of his way. We did have the talk when I was 11, and by the talk, I mean my father made my mother go buy the book, You're Almost 12, and he scooted it toward me with his toe across the floor. And then he turned around and walked away, muttering, if you have any questions, you can go talk to your mother. So when I left home, I had not had relations with another adult man. Sorry. I had not had a relationship with another adult man. I didn't know how to be an adult. I didn't know how to be a man. I guess I figured I would just fall into the role because I had what every other adult man in my church had: a closed and entitled mind. I also had an overbearing father complex, which would rear its ugly head anytime anyone criticized me or told me I was doing something wrong. Act like my father. No matter who it was, peers, other adults, girlfriends, especially girlfriends. When they would criticize or tell me I'm doing something wrong, my brain would just start spinning like, I've got a penis, I'm old enough, I'm obviously a man. Why am I feeling like a child at this moment? I have no idea what to do. Nobody explained this to me. And my brain would just curl up in the fetal position and suck its thumb, leaving the rest of me no choice but to act like a spoiled child and throw a temper tantrum. But now, I'm almost 60, and I like to think that some things have been able to tunnel their way into my lead-lined skull. I feel like I exude a quiet strength, a respectable aloofness that conveys self-sufficiency, but which can be plied with bourbon or rye or a nice Pinot Noir, or really any Pinot Noir, any red wine. I'm confident. I don't have the wittiest of replies, but I can stand my ground. And when my kids' friends come to the house, I'm direct yet terse with them. I look them in the eye with acceptance and convey more than a dash of, this is my house, do not disrespect me or my kid. That's how I saw myself until my kids shared what their friends thought of me, and I quote, he's an awkward little man. I think I've come to understand my father complex a little bit, and I can recognize the triggers and can tell when it's starting to act up, and I'm usually able to settle it down. But around my father, even as a middle-aged man, I was always a child. That father-son dynamic just never went away. And it was really brought up in sharp detail that the last time I visited him before he died, I was there for about a week. We both knew it was the last time we'd see each other. And we didn't have a conversation. He was stuck in the role of patriarch, and I was stuck in the role of 8-year-old. Instead of interacting, he just rehashed the ideas that he held as objective truth, which meant they were true for me. Ideas like the second law of thermodynamics summarily dismisses evolution. The 1611 King James Bible is the Bible. Homosexuality is a sin and leads to marriage between men and animals. And there is no morality aside from God, his God. And instead of interacting, I just sat there and listened. I figured, whatever I say, I'm not going to change his mind. And, why poke the bear? I had done that before, poke the bear, and one time asked, really, what's so bad about homosexuality? And my father released his inner revivalist and pummeled me with Bible verses for 30 minutes. After I left and my sister called to tell me he had died, I started fantasizing about his funeral. I fantasized about ridiculing him and his beliefs. Thought about taking some blocks up there and stacking one block on top of another to prove that you really can go against the second law of thermodynamics if you just put a little work into it. I thought about calling him out for being a shitty father, a shitty spiritual leader, a child abuser in thought and deed. But I didn't go. I didn't go to his funeral. At the time, I thought I had chickened out. It took me several years after that to work through that anger and to realize that urge to deride him and his beliefs was just a convenient way to not feel the real hurt. And that real hurt was that I never had a relationship with him. I only ever saw him as a father, and he only ever saw me as a child, and a sinful, unrepentant child at that. He saw my long hair, my earrings, my tattoos, my divorce as proof I had rejected his God, and so he rejected me. And what really hurt was that I didn't see him struggle with that. I didn't see him question it. He just accepted that I would be in hell for eternity and he would be in heaven. And that's just, it was my choice. And so he washed his hands of me. And this was shown to me that during that last visit, the last day I was there, we were sitting together in silence for a while, and my father broke the silence with one sentence. I have nothing more to say to you, Ken. I sat there waiting for a qualification, an explanation, or something, but there was just silence. When I left, we said goodbye to each other, but we never spoke again. He really did have nothing more to say to me. I have two ways of making an ass of myself. One, I'm trying to be funny, and I say the first thing that pops into my head. Two, I'm not trying to be funny, and I say the first thing that pops into my head. My inner censor is either a 12-year-old boy, a 22-year-old fraternity pledge, or a 92-year-old man who hasn't heard any of the conversation for the last 15 minutes and doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks of it. In college, I was at my girlfriend's house, and her mother and father were going through a nasty, nasty, bitter divorce. It was me, my girlfriend, her mom, and her dad's mother. So me, my girlfriend, her mom, and her mom's mother-in-law. And the big deal today was he bought a new car. Apparently they had driven the same Volvo sedan and Chevy van for the past 50 years, and the mom was really, really upset that he went and bought this sporty car. I think it was a LeBaron. And she's just cursing him out, calling him a son of a bitch right in front of his mother, which I thought was really weird. So to cool things off, we decided to go see a movie, the four of us. And it wasn't my idea, but somebody picked Heartburn, which, if you don't know, is a movie about a couple going through a nasty, nasty, bitter divorce. So we go to the movie, driving home. I'm in the backseat with my girlfriend. Mom asked me, "What'd you think of the movie?" I said it was okay, and I should have stopped. It was okay, but I don't get why he didn't buy a new car. He drove the same car for the whole movie. So Mom almost crashes, turning around to hiss at me. My girlfriend's punching me, hissing at me. And I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that Grandma was laughing. I once drove a kid to have sex. Not with me. I mean, with me. I was in the car and I was driving. And the kid was like 22. Let me explain. I was an Uber driver for a while. And I picked up this kid. And he sits in the front, which I always hated because they think that gives them the right to talk to me during the trip. So he starts talking. "Do you want to know where I'm going?" "No," but he doesn't wait for the answer. "A guy is paying me $100 to have sex with his wife. And I know she's pretty because he sent a picture of her." I thought, son, if that's a picture of his wife, and that's a really big if, it's a glamour shot from 20 years ago. And he goes on, "And I can really use the money." And I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm not a bartender. I don't want to hear the sob story. Continues, "I can really use the money because I'm going to prison tomorrow for manslaughter." It gets real quiet. My hand's on the knife I keep in that pocket door. We pull up to the stop. He's getting out and he says, "Hey, if you're around in an hour, you give me a ride back." Son, I'm going to be in a different time zone in an hour. In 2020, I became a news junkie for the first time. I was working at home and had news scrolling on one of my screens constantly. News about COVID, the latest fuck-ups that our lead clown in the circuit to DC made, and the murder of George Floyd. Later that year, I was listening to a news broadcast while I was working and not really paying attention. I knew I knew it was about people of color being incarcerated at a much higher rate than whites. And like I said, it was sort of in the background, but I did notice a little voice in the back of my head say, "Of course, they commit more crimes." Now, I know what you're thinking. That little voice in the back of Ken's head is a racist, and I agree. And it really startled me, and where did that come from? And I began to realize that my whole life, I've been living under a false assumption. I've been assuming that my experiences are the same for anybody who was raised in a working class, blue-collar family, put themselves through school with student loans and work study, was fortunate enough to get a job. I was totally missing two very important factors. I'm male and I'm white. Just as an example, let me describe my experiences with the police. I don't remember ever seeing a cop car in our white suburban West Philadelphia neighborhood. Didn't really interact with any police until college. One time I was in the car with three buddies and we got pulled over, and the officer walked up and said, "There's a lot of activity in the back seat," which was my friends pushing the beer under the front seat. But nothing happened. He didn't search the car, he just let us go. I've had numerous traffic stops, speeding, left turn from the right lane. I took a corner too hard in my Ford Fairmont station wagon and got breathalyzed. One time I was walking home from a bar and I was really drunk, and I was walking like I was really drunk. And a cruiser pulls up and the officers get out and tell me, public intoxication, you really can't do that. And I said, "Oh, okay, I can probably walk home." And so they let me walk home. I broke a bar window with my ass, which is a story for my next show. Got handcuffed, put in the back of the cruiser, taken to the police station. They put me in a room, not in a cell. A couple hours later, they figured I was sober enough to walk home. In South Dakota, I got pulled over for doing 79 and a 75, and it was a canine unit. The officer had me sit in the cruiser with him and was threatening to search the car because the dog could smell a month-old roach. And as we're talking, his eyes are going back and forth. Ponytail, earrings, ponytail, earrings, ponytail, earrings. I thought, buddy, my eyes are up here. And he let me off with the warning, didn't search the car. Here in Kansas City, I was in Walgreens at 39th and Broadway. There's a police officer right inside the door. As I'm leaving, something sets off the shoplifter alarm. I stop, look at him, he looks at me, then he scans the store. I feel like he's counting the people of color. Then he just looks back to me and motions for me to go. In all of those encounters, I was never once threatened. I was never touched except for being handcuffed. I don't remember an officer even putting a hand on his gun, let alone drawing it. I felt safe in those interactions with the police. And I realized that my experiences are not normal. My experiences are the experiences of a white male. And that's where that little voice came from. I did not understand at all what it is like to be a person of color in this country. If everyone should accept the way God made you, so if you're born with a penis, you're a man your whole life, then I think we should outlaw Viagra and Cialis. Because if God lets you get erectile dysfunction, maybe you're just not praying hard enough. You don't think God can give you a 4-hour boner? Reading between the lines in Genesis. And on the 6th day, God created ticks, head lice, body lice, pubic lice, crabs, mites, bed bugs, and flesh-eating bacteria. And God saw that it was good. Who swallowed the 2 tapeworms so they would survive the flood? Fruit flies live for a month and lay 500 eggs. Does that mean that every 30 days, Noah had to find one baby boy fruit fly, one baby girl fruit fly, and kill the other 498 baby fruit flies? As I said, I grew up evangelical fundamentalist, and their God is constant, never changes. Same yesterday, today, tomorrow, 6,000 years ago when he created the world. But let's look at this God. Let's look at the evangelical fundamentalist God in a little more detail. So they have the Old Testament, which is a pejorative way of referring to the Hebrew Scriptures. So obviously God started out Jewish. Then with Jesus, and shortly after, he joined a hippie commune called The Way, where everybody sold their possessions to give the money to the poor. But it didn't take long for God to realize somebody's got to be in charge. And so he converted to Roman Catholicism, where a lot of people are in charge. And that was a pretty good gig for a while until Martin Luther came along and shouted, "Stop the steal!" and "Priests, we don't need no stinking priests." So God converted to Protestantism. And he went through a lot of variety on that theme. Anglican, Anabaptist, Calvinist, Lutheran, Methodist, Presbyterian, Southern Baptist, Quaker, Pentecostal, until in the 1950s. Then, one night, God was probably drunk or something, and he wandered into a tent revival led by Billy Graham. Now, Billy's white male domination, truth are us and only us message really got to God, and he heeded that altar call, and he walked down that aisle, and he was born again. So being a new convert, he was very excited to start proselytizing, and he started a cult called evangelical fundamentalism. But, no, evangelical fundamentalism is not a cult. But it kind of is. But it's not. But it is. I'm sure most of you have heard of Ezekiel bread. They sell it in the stores. And it's based on this story in the book of Ezekiel where God is channeling fundamentalism. But, no, evangelical fundamentalism is not a cult. But it kind of is. But it's not. But it is. Sorry. I'm sure most of you have heard of Ezekiel bread. They sell it in the stores. And it's based on this story in the book of Ezekiel where God is channeling his inner Julia Child and gives a recipe to Ezekiel for making bread. And the recipe is correct on the wrapper, but they are leaving something out. And I'll do a little skit and see if you can figure out what they're not telling you. God, Ezekiel, get some barley and some spelt, yada, 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 and make a bread and cook it over human dung. Ezekiel, wait a minute. I think we've got a bad connection. You said to cook this over human dung? I did. No, I'm not going to do that. Well, you're the only one out here, so it's going to be your dung. Doesn't that make it better? No, it doesn't, really doesn't. Okay, if you're going to whine about it, you don't have to use human dung. Oh, thank God. You can use cow dung. So, hopefully, the makers of Ezekiel bread are not hardcore religious. Take everything literally.
So hopefully they're not cooking it that way. But if you are, then you need to throw out the toaster, slide in that fire pit every morning, and toast your Ezekiel bread the right way. I think a constitutional originalist reading of the Second Amendment would go, you can own as many guns as you want, as long as they're the guns the founding fathers were thinking of. Muskets. You walk into a school, a store, a mall, an office with a musket, nobody cares. You're going to get off one shot, probably miss, and then while you're reloading, some little girl's going to come up and be all in your junk, pummeling your white balls. Now, I know white balls is a stereotype, but, I mean, it's true. And the other benefits of the musket theory is we don't have to worry about the argument over high-capacity magazines. You can carry around as big a bag of musket balls as you want. We also don't have to worry about concealed carry. Maybe Shaquille O'Neal could conceal carry a musket, but he's not going to be very quick on the draw. But I think the most important is it will end mass shootings.
Because the shooter can't count on killing himself at the end, because it takes a lot of ingenuity to shoot yourself with a 3-foot 8-inch barrel. Most of the time, a big toe has to be involved. So there are constitutional originalists, like 2/3 of Scrotus, and I think the R is like radical, religious radical or something. I just like saying Scrotus. And there are religious originalists, like that senator from Texas whose last name rhymes with ooze. And they're both the same animal. They take a document which they consider to be divine, inspired, timeless, and pick and choose what words they want to keep and what words they want to throw out. The religious originalist will use the Bible as a science textbook, as a history textbook, yet you're not killing homosexuals like it says to in Leviticus. It's a sin for a man to have long hair, but you keep reading a couple of verses later, St. Paul says women should cover their head when they pray. My mother never covered her head when she prayed. So they're taking a document that is 100% inspired, divine, every word purposefully written by God, and saying, oh, well, this part doesn't apply to us today. In other words, they're saying they know the mind of God. And it's a little odd because wasn't Lucifer's sin one of hubris as well? So what does all this hubris make the religious originalist? Let me think, what could it be? Could it be Satan? And I really don't get this WWTFFD attitude. What would the founding fathers do? We know what the founding fathers would do. Not let women vote, count people of color as fractional persons, and make everyone who owns a gun be in the militia to lay down their life to defend the country. The Constitution is a living document because we have amendments. We changed what the founding fathers said. So it doesn't make any sense to interpret the Constitution from the founding fathers' point of view. And Clarence Thomas is really kind of a mystery. I can only think of really one rationale for his recent stance, and that is that he wants to divorce Ginny, but there's an ironclad, kick-ass prenup. So he's doing an end run. Roe v. Wade, same-sex marriage, contraception, then they're going to get to interracial marriage. Ginny, I dissented, but they overruled me. And interracial marriage is not legal, and it never was. So that prenup is just a piece of paper. And I don't understand the idea that same-sex marriage has no constitutional basis. Because you know what else has no constitutional basis? Heterosexual marriage. The word marriage is not in the Constitution. Remember Jack Phillips, that baker in Colorado who refused to bake a cake for the gay couple's wedding? And they sued, and the Supreme Court backed up Jack. Well, that was a really big precedent to set. And I'm not talking about for the Supreme Court, I'm talking about for Jack. Because if he's going to use religious beliefs to deny service to people who are directly going against the Bible, then he really needs to up his vetting game. That woman that just ordered the wedding cake, she was a little big in the belly. Was that bloating from lactose intolerance, or is that a baby bump? You're not a doctor, Jack. You better make her take a pregnancy test right here, right now. You wouldn't want to be seen supporting premarital sex now, would you? That guy who just came in and ordered a birthday cake, are his pants made of a cotton linen blend? You're not a fashion designer, Jack. You better check the label. You wouldn't want to be seen supporting someone who goes against Leviticus 19:19. And you can't stop at your customers. How about the politicians you support? Have any of them been involved in a sex scandal or lied under oath? You got to find a new candidate there, Jack. How about your favorite movie? Did you vet the cast and crew? What if the gaffer and best boy are in a same-sex relationship? You can't watch that movie anymore. You don't want to be seen supporting activities that go directly against the Bible. Musicians, store owners, store employees, restaurant servers, restaurant owners, Starbucks barista, your mail carrier. You got to vet them all. Does it seem like a lot of work to force your religious beliefs on the rest of the world, Jack? And just make the cake. Just make the cake. Things seem to be getting queerer than usual lately, don't they? I mean, I know other people have kids that are asexual, trans, non-binary, and that's fine. But my kid has come out as non-binary, and I've got a problem with that. The problem is, I don't know how to refer to them. Kid and child are not good long-term solutions. It's perfectly fine to have a 38-year-old son or 38-year-old daughter, but when I'm 80, talking about my kid, they're going to be like, oh, you've got a little one at home. Congrats on the trophy wife, sly dog. You're like a poorer Donald Trump. So I want to get a new term for my kid and others. And after a lot of thought, I decided to go with #NGO, non-gendered offspring. Now, I know NGO is non-government organization, like a charity, but they, them, their pronouns are already confusing, so let's just add to that, right? So here's a conversation that I think is going to happen a lot once #NGO goes trending. I have to leave work early today. My NGO has an inner ear infection. I have to run by the drugstore. Oh, I didn't know you had an NGO. I thought that was more of a European thing. Oh no, anyone can have an NGO. A lot of my friends have NGOs. Oh, wait a minute. Your entire NGO has an ear infection? No, it's pretty much localized to the ear area. No, I mean, everybody has an ear infection. No, just one person, my NGO. Oh, so you have a ear infection. No, my NGO does. But aren't you in your own NGO? I don't like where this discussion is going. What are you talking about? I'm talking about your NGO, your nonprofit. I'm talking about my hashtag NGO, my non-gendered offspring. It's taken me a long time to be able to look back at my life and laugh. A friend of mine the other day told me that he's been laughing at my life for 15 years, but he's only known me for 12. It's really good to finally be in on the joke. Isn't putting compost on plants really forced herbal cannibalism? I found a flaw in the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. What if, and I'm just going to pull something random out of the air, what if I want to be spanked during sex, but you don't? The rule says I should spank you, and you should not spank me. See, nobody's getting what they want. I complained to a friend that I just couldn't lose weight, and she said, "Are you putting heavy cream and butter in your morning coffee?" She's keto. And I said, "Yes. And my morning oatmeal, and my morning eggs, and my morning French toast. It just doesn't work." So I've switched to iced coffee in the morning. And so now, since I can't put the butter in the coffee, I just get a stick out of the fridge and eat it like a popsicle. I've never really been into the superhero genre. My favorite Avenger is Diana Rigg as Emma Peel. But I have watched the Netflix series Jessica Jones, and boy, can she drink. In one episode, she claims to drink a liter of bourbon a day. That's like 18 Manhattans every day. Now, I'm more of a red wine man these days, for the health benefits. But there was a time when bourbon was my go-to, and let's just say Jessica was not out drinking me by much. So I was drinking heavily, but it was for medicinal purposes. And by medicinal purposes, I mean I was self-medicating. Because at the time, I was going through a severe, debilitating, life-obliterating depression. And I was looking for a way out. And one day I thought, I wonder if anyone has tried drinking copious amounts of bourbon as a cure for depression. I think I'll do a research trial. But that's just the kind of person I am. I'm always working toward a cure. Plus, I was doing intermittent fasting at the time, where you only eat for 8 hours out of the day. And that was before it became a thing. I am something of an influencer. I think many of you might know the little thing called the Cinnamon Challenge. I invented the Cinnamon Challenge in 1974. I was baking something and was measuring out that cinnamon and thought, I like cinnamon. I wonder what a whole lot of cinnamon tastes like. And the rest is, as they say, history. So, drinking heavily, but medicinal drinking, working toward a cure, and intermittent fasting, I think that puts me in the black. I think that's a pretty good lifestyle. But I guess I should admit that the intermittent fasting was not voluntary. I had no choice but to eat only 8 hours a day because I was asleep for the other 16. Yep, my depression manifested as hypersomnia, and that really makes you look lazy. It's not good if you're looking for compassion or empathy from others. So I guess that brings us more to still a pretty balanced life. I think, 2 positives, 2 negatives. I think that's pretty balanced, as balanced as, say, Fox News. So, the topic is depression at the center mic. In 2008, I had what is called a severe depressive episode. Well, it started in 2008. About 6% of men and 10% of women have these episodes. Most last weeks to months. Mine lasted years. And once you have one, the rates go way up. 50% of people who have one episode will have another. So I spend a great deal of time and energy monitoring how I'm feeling and wondering, is this bad mood just that, a bad mood? Or is it the start of another episode? Talking about depression and mental health in general is difficult. It's still pretty taboo. I mean, I think it is getting better, but the word depression is used in so many different ways that it's easy to misinterpret what the person is saying. I'm depressed because the Chiefs lost the playoff game. I'm depressed because I lost my job. I'm depressed and have a specific plan to kill myself. Depression is isolating. It takes an extreme amount of effort and energy to just get out the door. It was so easy to just find any excuse to stay home, stay in bed, rather than go out and be with people. The consequences of depression can be devastating. I lost my job, so I relied on my savings and lost all my savings. I lost and strained relationships. I lost years of my life. I tried medications. They kind of worked a little. I went to therapy, which really helped. It helped me at least consciously understand that my life was not as bleak as I thought it was. And my therapist really gave me a lot of support when I needed that support the most. But looking back, I think the most important thing during that time was my kid, Jay. They were 2 when it started, and I was a stay-at-home dad, and so there were responsibilities that I had to take care of. I mean, Jay gave me a reason to get out of bed. They gave me a reason to walk across the street to the park, even though most of the time I just sit there while they played. But most crucially, Jay gave me a reason to suffer and to endure that suffering, because I couldn't bring myself to even imagine someone having to explain to Jay why their dad wasn't around anymore. Okay, we'll end on a joke. Louisa Adams, Elizabeth Priscilla Tyler, Sarah Polk, Frances Cleveland, Jacqueline Kennedy, Michelle Obama. That's my short list of FLILFs. A FLILF is a MILF, but where the mother is a First Lady of the United States. And I know that at least one of you is going to go home and Google Frances Cleveland. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for coming out to my show. This was my last show. I'm local. You might see something else later from me. I don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people I want to thank. First of all, I want to thank my #NGOJ. They wrote and performed the music that you heard at the beginning and at the end. They told me some of my jokes were not funny. They told me some of my jokes were a little offensive, and so I told them. a lot of help. They were at the show, so there's a little bit of cringe going on, I think.
Okay. Thank you, and good night.